Hi guys, it's Miss Gombuski. I wish that we could meet up and finish our book club together in person, but it looks like we're not going to be able to right now. And so instead of just kind of holding off, I figured we could still do book club, but remotely. So what I'll do is each week I'll send the book club bag, and in the bag will be the activity that you can do. And then there'll be a video that you guys can watch that'll be me explaining the activity, asking you guys some questions, and reading the story. We're almost done, so we're only going to have 2 more sessions like this, and then your third book club will be you guys being able to watch the movie and compare the movie to the book. So we really only had 3 more sessions to go, so I figured let's finish it since you guys started it and have been awesome participants in book club. So before I read, I wanted to just show you above me are your guys's some of the things that you guys worked on and our predictions. And predictions means when we make an educated guess on what we think is going to happen at the end of the story. And you guys have been predicting along how many earthworms, how many worms you think Billy will eat. If we count all our worms here behind me, he's eaten 9 worms so far. And remember that the bet is that he will eat 15 worms. So you're going to have a little sheet that looks like this. And I'd like you guys to vote before we continue reading on how many worms you think Billy's going to eat. If you think he's going to eat the 15, if you think 9's enough, he's done, he lost the bet, whatever you predict, take a second, take a minute, and write down your prediction and put those predictions in the book club bag, and I will add those up here in the next video. Just to recap our story, like I said, so far there's been 9 worms eaten by Billy. And just to remember, we have Billy and Tom as a team versus Alan and Joe. And really the competition is between Billy, or not the competition, the bet is between Billy and Alan. They started the bet, and then Tom and Joe took sides for their friends. So that he's had 9 worms so far, and one thing we noticed is that Joe and Alan are scheming. They're trying to figure out how to trick Billy into not being able to eat the worms. And so to just summarize some of the chapters that we've read before is Alan and Joe were trying to convince Billy that he's going to get sick if he continues to eat the worms. And then Billy had a stomach ache and thought he really was going to get sick. And they also tried to trick him by making it almost impossible for him to eat a worm with all the different rules that they have for the bet. So my question for you guys before we start reading is, do you think it's fair that Alan and Joe are doing things to make eating the worms more difficult? And what about when they start lying to him about the effects of the worm? So, meaning when they start lying to him, telling him, if you eat worms, you're going to get sick, you're going to have a stomach ache, you're going to die. They tell him all these things, and they're trying to get into his head and scare him from competing in the bet. Do you think that tricking somebody when you're doing the bet is fair, or do you think it's not fair to do that? Feel free to just jot down your opinion on the behind your voting sheet. Write if it's fair or not fair. And I will touch base with you soon. Thank you. Alright, so let's get reading. We have a couple chapters to read, and then I'm going to show you the craft that you guys can do today. Alright, here we go. "What's for dinner?" said Billy's father, coming to the kitchen. "Well," said Billy's mother, "you and I and Emily are having hamburgers and string beans and mashed potatoes. Billy's having a fried worm." "More worms? The bet's still on? Look." She took a small plate covered with saran wrap out of the refrigerator. "Have you eaten 9 of these already, Billy?" He poked the worm curiously. "What do? Use a lot of ketchup and mustard?" Billy nodded. "And horseradish and other things, and we fry them." Billy's father lifted a corner of the saran wrap and smelled the worms. Helen, you ought to be able to do better than fried. Use your cookbooks. I'm not the cook. I'm just the referee. Oh, come on. Think of the challenge. He took a cookbook from the shelf under the spice rack. Let's see. Mastering the art of French cooking. He leafed through the cookbook. Here, how about poached eels on toast? No, said Billy's mother. It calls for chopping up the eel in little pieces, and that would be against the rules. How about spaghetti and worm balls, then? Or a savory worm pie? Creamed worm on toast? Spanish worm? Worm loaf with mushroom sauce? Wait, said Billy's mother, putting down her cooking spoon. It might just... She looked through the cookbook and turned to the index. Here, she read, Alston smothered worm, dredged with worm-seasoned flour, sautéed in 3 tablespoons of drippings until brown, covered with sliced onion, poured over 1 cup of sour cream, covered pot closely, and bake until slow, oven until tender. Bravo, said Billy's father. Put the hamburgers back in the refrigerator. We'll all have worms tonight. I won't, said Emily. Ha, said Billy, grinning in the midst of the chewing. Boy, Alan and Joe thought they were doing me in when they came to you, Mom. But this is better than steak. It really tastes good. Ugh, ugged Emily, making a face. Let me have a taste, said Billy's father. No, no, said his mother. Billy has to eat every bite himself. Alan and Joe were very firm about that, and I am the referee. Boy, said Billy, I don't mind if it tastes like this. So he just ate his 10th worm, so we're going to add another worm to the board. So he's got 10 up there. How'd you do it, said Billy. What's it called? My word, said his father. Gosh, Mrs. Forrester, gaped Tom. On a silver dish in front of Billy laid an ice cream cake bathed in fruit syrup, peach, cherry, tutti frutti, candy orange, topped with whipped cream, sprinkled with jelly beans and almond slivers. It's called Whiz Bang Worm Delight, said Billy's mother proudly. I made it up. Is the worm really in there? Said Billy, poking around with a spoon, and then scraping away a bit of whipped cream on the top. He glimpsed the worm's snout protruding from the center of the cake. Snug as a bug in a rug, said his mother. I still wouldn't eat a worm, said Emily, eyeing the whiz worm delight with envious distaste. I would, said Tom. At least maybe I would. So that he just ate his 11th worm. His mom just made the recipe because Joe and Alan weren't going to be able to be there, and so they used the mom as the referee because they trust her that she won't take sides. She didn't take sides. She's making Billy eat the worm, but she did make it pretty special with all the sweets and treats on top of the worm for him to eat. But he just ate his 11th worm. All right, the next chapter, we're back to Joe and Alan. It won't work. Look, said Joe, even if he remembers the worm while we're at Shea, he can't get one. Where is anyone going to find a worm at Shea Stadium? Don't worry. We'll say you won. We'll find a worm after we get home, and we'll keep right on stuffing him. Peanuts, hot dogs, hamburgers, Cracker Jacks, ice cream, orange soda, gum, Mars bars. You know how he loves to eat. You never seen him refuse something to eat. By the time he starts home, he'll be bloated, drowsy, belching. Remember the last time when his father took us? He was asleep by the time we hit Peekskill. Your father will carry him in the car. His mother and father will put him to bed. And the next morning he'll wake up. Too late! You've won! 15 worms in 15 days. He missed a day. So that chapter, Joe and Alan are trying to think of ways to trick Billy so that he can't eat the worms by taking him to a baseball game at Shea Stadium and stuffing him with all these other treats and foods so that he won't be hungry for the worm later and that he'll forget. So again, think of that question. Do you think that's fair that he's doing that? Or do you think it's okay because it's a bet and kind of all tricks are allowed during a bet? All right, the next chapter. Alan gnawed his thumbnail. What about Tom? We'll ask him along. And then just not pick him up. We'll tell your father that Billy, that Tom's mother called, and he's sick. His grandma died. Anything, just so that he won't bring him with us." Alan sighed. "Geez, it'll probably cost me $8 just to buy all that food. Cracker Jacks, hamburgers." "Yeah, but it'll cost you $50 if he wins." "Yeah, well, oh geez, how do I ever get into this? My father finds out." Alan slumped on the porch steps, grazing down at his sneakers and gnawing his thumbnail. "Come on," said Joe, slapping him on the shoulders. "Cheer up. We haven't lost yet. Go ask your father." "You think Alan really meant it when he said he'd given up?" said Billy, turning the flame under the frying pan. He was cooking a toasted cheese and worm sandwich. "I don't know," said Tom, looking at the refrigerator. "I suppose. He asked us to the Mets game. Say, is that chocolate pudding?" "Yeah, don't take any. It's for supper." "I could just scrape some off the top, and then you could tell your mother it fell upside down and on the floor by mistake while you were getting cheese out. So scrape the dirty parts off into the garbage." "Well," said Billy doubtfully. "Tom Grout," said Billy's mother, coming in from the hall. "I'm surprised at you." "Oh, Mrs. Forrester, I wouldn't really have done it. I was just, talking. Everybody talks. My father, Billy's father, Billy, my sisters, Annie, Charlotte, Polly." He was backing towards the door. "Betsy, Agnes, Columbus." "I don't know you had a sister named Columbus, Tom," said Billy's mother. "Would you like some chocolate ice cream instead?" "Oh, sure, Mrs. Forrester," said Thomas, relieved. He sat down at the table. "It's my cousin whose name's Columbus," he grinned. "Columbus, Ohio. He's a capital fellow, Mrs. Forrester." And then he grabbed the edge of the table to keep from rolling in his chair laughing at his own joke. Billy looked disgusted, and his mother opened the refrigerator, shaking her head. Now, that chapter, Billy was just eating a cheese and worm sandwich. So he just ate his 12th worm. He's eating a lot at his house because Joe and Alan can't be there to supervise, but like I said, his mom agreed to be the referee and make sure he actually eats one every day for the 15 days. And so far, he's at 12 worms. The car slid quietly to the top of the streetlights outside Billy's house. "Shh," whispered Alan to his father. "Billy's asleep." His father glanced at Billy snoring peacefully in the back seat, his plump cheeks stickly with orange soda. "Alan, run up to the house and tell them to bring Billy in." Billy's mother met him at the front door, and taking Billy, whispered his thanks. Alan and his father went down the walk behind the porch light. In the back seat of Joe and Alan wrestled gleefully. "We did it! We won! He'll never wake up now." Alan struggled out of Joe's grip and asked his father what time it was. "Late. Almost midnight, I think." Joe pulled Alan's head down and tried to sit on it. He couldn't do it now, even if he woke up. How would he find and cook and eat a worm in the dark? "Ha ha ha! We won! We won!" So they think that this chapter started with them coming back from the stadium. So we know that they were trying to trick him by eating all the candy and goodies, and Billy was asleep, and Billy had to be taken into the house. So if he doesn't find a worm it's almost midnight, so he only has a few minutes to find a worm, and if he doesn't, he's going to lose the bet. But slumped in the bathroom stool, his mother holding his chin while he washed his face, Billy was waking. "Hold still, dear. Did you have a good time? You certainly are home late." "Is this part of the winning bet?" Billy's eyes blinked sleepily. He had a gnawing feeling he had forgotten something. He hiccuped, gazed droopily down the fuzzy blue bath mat, and yawned. He'll remember in the morning. It couldn't be, but bet? He hadn't won yet. There are still 3 to go. 15 worms in 15 days. He jumped up. "Mom, I haven't eaten a worm today." And suddenly it all came to him. The whole trip. All the candy bars and hot dogs and hamburgers and popcorn. "What time is it, Mom? Quick!" "About 11:45. It was a trick!" He snatched his pants on the floor. "They're trying to make me forget." He tumbled and slid down the stairs through the dining room, his shirt tail flying, and yanked open the drawer in the kitchen table and snatched out the flashlight. The drawer spilling out in the clatter, crashed onto the floor and slammed to the back door. "The Finks!" and he scuttled across the backfield towards Tom's house, searching the background with a flashlight went. There, darn, a stick. Geez, I suppose I can't find one. He stopped. There won't be time to cook it. He ran on. And no ketchup. He stopped. I'll bet Tom wasn't sick at all. He ran on. The night was moonless and close. He paused and heaved over a rotten log in the high, dewy grass. Meal bugs and scooters clambered all over the stone wall into Tom's backyard, and all of a sudden, rustling with the pup tent. Muffled grunts and thrashes. Tom, he yelled. Tom, it's me, Billy. They're trying to trick us. Tom and his younger brother Pete crawled out from under the tent. It was a trick, panted Billy. Alan and Joe were trying to get me to forget. 15 worms in 15 days. And if I don't eat one in the next 10 minutes, Alan says he's won. And it's almost midnight. And they left me home so I wouldn't remind you. Billy nodded. Have you got a worm? We'll have to find one. Tom dug into his tent and came up with 2 flashlights. They zigzagged back and forth across the lawn, bent over, searching. I got one, cried Pete. Shh, I have to eat it raw, said Billy. He threw his head back. Wait, whispered Tom, grabbing his arm. You should do it where Alan and Joe can see you. Pete, run and get the siren out of the garage. Under the streetlight in the front of Alan's house, Tom and Pete knelt over the siren. Billy stood behind them, the nightcrawler squirming in his fingers. Now wait till lots of lights come on all over in the houses, said Tom. Then chomp it down. Ready, Pete? Now. The siren growled, winding slowly up and up until a screech across the sleeping neighborhood, sending birds squawking, chirping into the air from the trees and rooftops. Dogs began to bark, windows lit up, and there were confused shouts, bangs on the window, slamming up. Ladies and gentlemen, shouted Tom through the dying whine of the siren, Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara, through your finkiness and cheating, their lies and dirty. Come on, muttered Billy, his head thrown back, dangling the worm over his open mouth. We haven't got much time. Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara, shouted Tom, have forced us to wake you all up so that you may witness da-da-da, the eating of the 13th worm. He dropped to his knees. The siren wound slowly up to a screech. Billy dropped the crawler into his mouth and chewed furiously, his eyes closed, fell to his knees, still chewing, his face turning beet red, toppled over his side, still chewing, rolled and writhed on the sidewalk, clenching his stomach, still chewing. Tom and Pete kneeling by the street lights, working the screaming sirens. Billy threw his open arms, laid still in the back, and glared at the streetlight, his mouth open wide. Ta-da! Announced Tom, springing up and pointing to Billy. The 3 boys ran off into the darkness. As they went, Tom yelled, Remember! Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara. A confused murmur rose up and down the street. Suddenly a boy shouted from Phelps' house, Thanks! Alan's father dragged him from the window. Is that why you were stuffing Billy with candy and junk all day? Leave me alone. Yeah, we're trying to trick him. The Finks! He yelled at the top of his voice, lunging towards the window. Quiet! His father sat them down in the chair. Joe peered fiercely out through the fringe of the bedspread. As soon as he heard the sirens and Tom's yells, he crawled under the bed. And that's why Billy woke the whole neighborhood, to show you he hadn't been tricked. Yes. His father let go of Alan's pajama collar. In the doorway, Alan's mother threw up her hands and went to the bathroom to take 2 aspirin. The next day, Alan and Joe tramped from house to house in the neighborhood, knocking at each door and reciting in chorus, Hello, we're Alan Phelps and Joseph O'Hara. We're the reasons you were waked up in the middle of the night last night, and we're sorry. You'll be happy to know our parents have punished us, and we can't look at television or eat desserts for a month, and our allowances have been taken away for 2 weeks. We must promise that it'll never happen again. At least in not this neighborhood, muttered Joe, as the last door closed behind him. And Alan, said his father at dinner that night, I don't want to hear that there's any repetition of this incident at Billy's or Tom's house or anywhere else. Do you understand? But we can't let them get away with it, Mr. Phelps, called Joe from the living room. He was waiting for Alan to finish his dinner. There'll be no repetition of this incident and anything like it, repeated Mr. Phelps. You tried to trick Billy and lost. Then there will be the end of this matter. Alan's dad doesn't know that there's money at stake for the bet. And Alan doesn't want to tell him. You know what you are, said Alan, nose almost touching Billy's. You're a jerk. And you're another, sneered Billy through the clenched teeth. A cheatin', lying, dirty, snot-nosed, cheatin', lying one. If you say 2 more words, said Alan, you know what? I'll beat your head in. Billy breathed hard. I'm right behind you, muttered Tom, peering grimly over Billy's shoulders, his fists clenched. Yeah, said Joe from behind Alan. So what? We can lick both of you with our hands tied behind our backs and paper-top bags over our heads. You wouldn't lick a flea. Yeah? Yeah. Spiffle, whack, thump. Someone's choking. No fair. Thwap, gudge. Joe crawled out from behind the tree, nose bleeding. Whomp! He's pulling hair. He's scratching. Twist, twist. Alan crawled behind a bush. Thump, whack, dong. Billy, it's just you and me. Where are the others? Tom and Billy untangled them and sat up. Bruised, scratched, dusty, shirts torn, hair tousled. Tom's nose was bleeding. Billy's shoe had come off. Yeah, sassed Alan and Joe from behind the tree. Billy started to shake his fist at him, clambered up, and then sank back. Tom panted behind the blurred eyes. Yeah, y'all, all worn out, can't fight any more. Alan scooped up a handful of mud and flung it at Tom and Billy, and Joe did the same. Billy and Tom scrambled up and pelted back. Mud splattered against the trees, and Alan began to cry. A rock hit Billy over the eye, and he sat down backwards in the mud, covering his head with arms, sobbing. Joe and Tom stopped throwing. Joe grabbed Alan. Come on. Tom knelt behind Billy. Let me see, Billy. Is it bad? Take your arm away. Let me see. He tried to pull Billy's arm apart, and Billy wrenched away. Come on, said Tom in a scared voice. I'll take you home. Come on. Your mother can take you to the doctor. So, my goodness, a lot just happened. He ate another worm. So he's had 13 worms now. But what's sad is all 4 of these boys were friends prior to this bet, and we talked about how sometimes a bet could make friends not be friends anymore, and we just ended with a fist fight. Billy, Alan, Joe, and Tom all got in a fight over this bet, and it got physical. So I want you guys to think about, do you guys think that Billy and the other boys will remain friends after all this fighting and name-calling? Would you remain friends with somebody that lied and cheated during a bet with you? So the activity that we're going to do today is make a sock worm. It's a cute, fun little quick craft, and then you guys will be able to have your own worm, stuffed animal. So what you need is a sock. So all the supplies that you need are in your guys' book club bag. So you'll pick a sock. You'll take one of the bags of cotton balls, and you each will have 4 rubber bands. And it's pretty simple. You're going to take your sock and you're going to open it up and you're going to start stuffing all that cotton. Everyone has roughly around the same amount of cotton, so use all of it if you would like to have kind of a nice fluffy worm. As you're putting the cotton into your worm, you don't want to stuff all the cotton at the one end, because then it's going to be it doesn't look like a worm, it just kind of looks like a ball. So we want to stuff it all in, and then I'll show you a little trick. Alright, so all my cotton is in there, but it doesn't really look like a worm, it just looks like kind of clumpy. So we're going to first stretch, see how I'm squeezing the sides to kind of thin it out a little bit, like that. And then you're going to take your rubber band, you're going to take one, and we're going to tie off the one end, and you're going to hold so that the cotton doesn't come out. We're going to twist and tie off the one end. Tie it nice and tight so that way the cotton doesn't fall out. So now you have like a tube like this. And now we're going to add more rubber bands for the body of the worm. I'm going to put one kind of close to the top. And it's nice and tight. Put another one in, kind of more in the body. So far, my worm. I'm going to do one more in the back. There. So here's your worm. Pretty easy. And then you're going to take your pipe cleaner and you're going to wrap it around the head of the worm. And you're going to twist it and tie a knot. I'm just tying a knot. One knot. And so if you can see, can you guys see that? It's kind of more like a caterpillar, I guess, than a worm, but I thought this part was kind of cute, so we're going to add that for its head. And then put these in the book bag when you're done. There's a marker in there, maybe write your name at the bottom, or at least your initials, so you know whose is who. Put these in the book bag, and then I will add googly eyes to it with the glue gun, and add some ribbon around the rubber bands so that you don't see it. So next time when you get your book club bin, you'll have your worm, your completed worm in there. Okay? Alright, so take your time, have fun making this quick little craft, and I will see you guys soon. Bye guys. Happy reading. Bye.